9 Ohio-class guided missile submarines launch 486 Tomahawk cruise missiles in the largest coordinated salvo in history. In 12 minutes, 160 North Korean targets are destroyed simultaneously. August 28, 2025. Waters surrounding Korean Peninsula. 9 submarines positioned at 8 locations. At 2:47 a.m., 9 Ohio-class guided missile submarines, USS Michigan, USS Ohio, USS Florida, USS Georgia, USS Louisiana, USS Maine, USS Maryland, USS West Virginia, and USS Wyoming, were positioned in international waters surrounding the Korean Peninsula. Each submarine, originally designed to carry Trident ballistic missiles, but converted to carry 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, represented the most concentrated conventional firepower available to any military. Tonight, they would demonstrate that firepower in an operation designed to cripple North Korea's military capabilities in a single coordinated strike. The decision to launch Operation Thunder Strike came after North Korea conducted its 10th nuclear weapons test on August 25th, detonating a device estimated at 250 kilotons, and threatening to use nuclear weapons against South Korea, Japan, and U.S. military bases. When North Korean state media released a video showing Kim Jong-un ordering his military to prepare nuclear strikes, the United States determined that preemptive action was necessary. The objective was clear: destroy North Korea's ability to launch nuclear weapons, conduct conventional attacks, and command its military forces. Do it simultaneously to prevent warning or retaliation, and do it with such overwhelming force that North Korea's leadership would recognize further escalation was futile. The target list developed over months by intelligence agencies and refined in the 48 hours after the nuclear test, contained 160 high-value targets distributed across North Korea. The targets included 23 nuclear weapons storage sites, 17 ballistic missile launch facilities, 47 military command centers, 36 air defense installations, 24 communications nodes, and 13 strategic bridges and tunnels. Each target was assigned specific missiles based on hardness, importance, and required weapons effects. Some targets would receive single missiles, others would be struck by 6 or more weapons to ensure destruction. The 9 submarines were positioned to provide optimal coverage. USS Michigan operated in the Sea of Japan, 120 nautical miles east of Wonsan. USS Ohio was positioned in the Yellow Sea, 140 nautical miles west of Pyongyang. USS Florida operated south of the Korean Peninsula in the Korea Strait. The remaining 6 submarines were distributed to provide overlapping coverage and redundancy. Each submarine's fire control system had been loaded with target coordinates, flight paths, and timing data. The missiles would launch from 9 locations but arrive at their targets within a 12-minute window, creating simultaneous explosions across North Korea. At 3:15 a.m., the 9 submarines received final authorization from U.S. Strategic Command, transmitted via extremely low-frequency communications. Execute Operation Thunder Strike. Launch window, 3 or 5 local time. All weapons time on target, 7. Weapons free. The submarines, operating at periscope depth with their vertical launch tubes oriented skyward, began final preparations. 486 Tomahawk cruise missiles, each costing $1.8 million and carrying a 1,000-pound warhead, were programmed with GPS coordinates and terminal guidance imagery that would allow them to strike targets with precision measured in feet. At 3:30 a.m., USS Michigan launched the first Tomahawk. The missile's booster rocket ignited, propelling it from the vertical launch tube into the night air with a brilliant orange flash. Wings deployed automatically. The turbofan engine started, and the missile descended to 100 feet above the ocean surface, beginning its programmed route toward North Korea. At 3-second intervals, more missiles launched. By 3:35 a.m., USS Michigan had fired all 54 Tomahawks assigned to it. The pattern repeated across all 9 submarines. By 3:45 a.m., 486 Tomahawk cruise missiles were airborne, flying toward North Korea from multiple directions at 550 miles per hour. Should submarine-launched strikes warn adversaries before impact, or is surprise essential for effectiveness? Type A for providing warning to evacuate personnel, Type B for surprise to maximize military effect. Comment your reasoning. The missile flight, lasting approximately 70 minutes, was monitored in real time by space-based infrared sensors and radar stations across the region. South Korea and Japan informed of the operation 30 minutes before launch to prevent misinterpretation, tracked the missile wave as it approached North Korean airspace. At 4 UEM, North Korean air defense radar detected the incoming missiles. Alarms sounded at command centers across the country. But the sheer number of targets overwhelmed defenders. With 486 missiles approaching from multiple directions simultaneously, prioritizing intercepts was impossible. At 4:15 a.m., North Korean air defenses began firing. SA-5 and SA-2 surface-to-air missiles launched from dozens of sites, fighter aircraft scrambled from air bases, and anti-aircraft artillery opened fire blindly toward suspected missile approach routes. But the Tomahawks, flying at treetop level and using terrain-following radar to hug valleys and avoid ridgelines, were extremely difficult targets. Between 4:15 and 4:45 a.m., North Korean defenses destroyed 14 Tomahawks through combination of missile intercepts and lucky anti-aircraft fire. 472 missiles continued toward their targets. At 4:45 a.m., the first wave struck. 17 Tomahawks hit ballistic missile launch facilities across North Korea's northeast. The Tonghae satellite launching ground, used for both space launches and ballistic missile tests, was struck by 8 missiles that destroyed launch pads, fuel storage, and the assembly building. The Musudan-ri missile test facility was hit by 6 missiles that collapsed the main gantry and destroyed underground command bunkers, and 3 mobile missile launchers detected by satellite surveillance and assigned coordinates hours earlier were struck by single missiles that destroyed the vehicles and killed their crews. Subscribe to Navy Mission now for the most detailed strategic strike coverage available. This is analysis that reveals precision warfare reality. At 4:47 a.m., the second wave struck nuclear weapons storage facilities. 23 sites, distributed across mountainous terrain to complicate targeting, received concentrated strikes. The Yongbyon Nuclear Scientific Research Center, North Korea's primary plutonium production facility, was hit by 12 Tomahawks. The missiles, using bunker-penetrating warheads, destroyed reactor buildings, reprocessing facilities, and storage bunkers. The Kangsan Enrichment Site, a uranium facility hidden in a mountain complex, was struck by 9 missiles that collapsed tunnel entrances and destroyed ventilation systems critical for underground operations. At 4:49 a.m., military command centers were engaged. 47 facilities ranging from the General Staff Department headquarters in Pyongyang to regional command posts controlling North Korean Army units were struck. The Ministry of People's Armed Forces building in central Pyongyang, a 7-story structure housing senior military leadership, was hit by 4 Tomahawks that demolished the building and killed an estimated 200 officers and staff. Forward command posts near the demilitarized zone controlling artillery units positioned to strike Seoul were destroyed by missiles that eliminated command capability for thousands of artillery pieces. At 4:51 a.m., air defense installations were targeted. 36 radar sites and surface-to-air missile batteries, the systems that had attempted to defend against the Tomahawk strike, were destroyed by missiles that home in on their radar emissions or struck using pre-programmed coordinates. The Wonsan Air Defense Complex, controlling coverage over eastern North Korea, was eliminated by 6 missiles that destroyed radar dishes, missile launchers, and command vehicles, With air defenses crippled, North Korea would be unable to defend against follow-up strikes by manned aircraft. At 4:53 a.m., communications nodes were destroyed. 24 facilities, including microwave relay stations, satellite ground stations, and underground communications bunkers, were struck. The destruction of these nodes severed communications between North Korean leadership in Pyongyang and military units across the country. Orders couldn't be transmitted, status reports couldn't be received, and the North Korean military, already under devastating attack, was suddenly deaf and blind. At 4:55 a.m., strategic infrastructure targets were engaged. 13 bridges and tunnels, critical for moving military forces between regions, were destroyed. The Taedong Bridge in Pyongyang, a key crossing point for the river running through the capital, was struck by 3 missiles that dropped 2 spans into the water. Railway tunnels connecting eastern and western North Korea were collapsed by precision strikes that sealed the passages with thousands of tons of rock. And highway bridges near the Chinese border, potential supply routes, were destroyed to complicate any Chinese support for North Korea. At 4:57 a.m., the final missiles struck their targets. The 12-minute barrage that had begun at 4:45 a.m. was complete. 472 Tomahawk cruise missiles had struck 160 targets across North Korea. 14 missiles had been shot down. Every assigned target had been hit by at least 1 missile, and critical targets had absorbed multiple strikes to ensure destruction. The scale of devastation was unprecedented. North Korea's nuclear program had been crippled. Its ballistic missile capabilities were destroyed. Command and control was severed, and air defenses were eliminated. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Fires burned at sites across North Korea. Secondary explosions occurred as ammunition and fuel stocks detonated. Survivors at attacked facilities attempted to rescue trapped colleagues and fight fires with limited equipment and no central coordination. At 5:30 a.m., as dawn broke, satellite imagery captured the extent of damage. Every targeted facility showed massive destruction. Some locations were still burning. Others were obscured by smoke from secondary fires. Do you think preemptive strikes causing thousands of casualties are justified to prevent nuclear threats? Share your ethical assessment below. North Korean casualty estimates compiled over following days through intelligence analysis were severe. Approximately 2,400 military personnel and government officials were killed in the strikes. An additional 3,600 were wounded, many critically. The casualties were concentrated among North Korea's military and technical elite: missile engineers, nuclear scientists, command staff, and communication specialists. These were the people who operated North Korea's most dangerous weapon systems. Their loss would take years to replace. For Kim Jong-un and North Korea's leadership, August 28th became a catastrophic demonstration of American military power. The regime had threatened nuclear strikes. The United States had responded by destroying North Korea's ability to execute those strikes while leaving the regime intact. The message was unmistakable. Threatening America invites overwhelming retaliation that removes capabilities without regime change. Kim could survive, but only if he abandoned nuclear threats. Within 48 hours, North Korean state media broadcasts shifted tone dramatically, claiming the nuclear test had been misunderstood and offering dialogue. For the United States, Operation Thunderstrike achieved strategic objectives with 0 American casualties. The 9 submarines had launched their missiles from international waters, remained undetected throughout the operation, and departed the area without being threatened. The 486 Tomahawks had cost approximately $875 million, a significant expense, but far less than the cost of fighting a war triggered by North Korean nuclear aggression. And critically, the operation had been conducted without violating Chinese or Russian airspace, avoiding escalation with other major powers. For China, North Korea's primary ally, August 28th created a diplomatic crisis. Beijing condemned the strikes as aggression, but took no military action. Chinese leadership, privately frustrated with North Korean provocations that risked regional war, used the crisis to pressure Kim Jong-un into accepting Chinese oversight of any nuclear program reconstruction. China's interests lay in a stable North Korea that didn't invite American military action. The strikes had proven that stability required restraining North Korean ambitions. For South Korea and Japan, the operation was relief mixed with concern. Both nations faced North Korean nuclear threats and welcomed the degradation of those capabilities. But the strikes had been conducted with minimal consultation, demonstrating American willingness to act unilaterally when threats required. Future operations might occur with even less warning, creating coordination challenges. Both nations requested improved communication protocols for future crises. The families of the 2,400 North Koreans killed received no public acknowledgement. The regime, embarrassed by the military failures, suppressed casualty information and discouraged mourning. Many families never learned exactly how their loved ones died. The engineers, soldiers, and officials who perished were buried quietly, their deaths attributed to accidents or omitted from official records entirely. The regime's prioritization of propaganda over transparency meant those who died defending it were erased from history. For the 9 Ohio-class submarines that had executed the strike, the operation became the defining mission of their service. They had demonstrated the capability that justified their conversion from ballistic missile platforms to cruise missile arsenals. Each submarine received recognition from fleet commands. Crews received commendations, and the submarines returned to patrol duties, ready to execute similar missions if required. As the sun rose fully on August 28th, smoke from 160 strike sites darkened North Korean skies. The country that had threatened nuclear war was suddenly unable to execute those threats. The facilities that had produced weapons were destroyed. The command centers that would have directed attacks were rubble, and the leadership that had provoked the crisis was intact but deterred. Operation Thunderstrike had demonstrated that even the most fortified regime couldn't protect its military infrastructure from precision strike weapons launched beyond its reach. Now I want 3 perspectives from you. First, does launching 486 missiles at 160 targets represent proportional response to nuclear threats or excessive force? Second, what does this operation reveal about the effectiveness of Tomahawk cruise missiles in modern strategic strikes? Third, should submarine-based strikes remain unacknowledged, or should transparency accompany such operations? Comment your detailed strategic and ethical analysis below. Your insights drive the conversations we have on Navy Mission, and if this breakdown of the largest coordinated cruise missile strike in history gave you new understanding of submarine-based precision strike capabilities, prove it by hitting that like button, subscribing to Navy Mission, and turning on notifications. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay precise, and remember that the most powerful deterrents are those that work before wars begin.